All right, now we can go to our first person on the panel. I'd like to introduce Dr. Quy Tran, and I'm going to read to you his bio. Doctor, yeah, just stand up so I can read. So you know what I'm talking
I
about.
didn't get the whole drawing rule, so
Sorry.
I feel a little naked without a
All right, so, Dr. Quy Tran is a medical oncologist and associate clinical professor at UC Davis Health, who is passionate about community health and advocates for creating safe, vibrant, and accessible spaces. He is a frequent volunteer throughout Pleasant Hill. He was on the Pleasant Hill Commission on Aging for more than 7 years, and currently he serves on the Pleasant Hill Recreation and Parks District Board of Directors. So are you ready for the questions?
Is the answer yes?
All right.
Yes.
So the first question, how long have you lived in Pleasant Hill? And can you tell us a little bit about your neighborhood and what you love about it?
We moved to Pleasant Hill about 2011 or so, and we chose it because it was a nice halfway place between San Francisco and Sacramento, given sort of our family dynamics. But we wanted to choose Pleasant Hill not because of the geography necessarily halfway, but we wanted a place where it was welcoming and family friendly. And Pleasant Hill was that. So it was a nice place geographically, but it was also a place where we felt we can raise a family. What I love about my neighborhood that I live in, so I live in the north part of Pleasant Hill, and it's a really friendly and place to be. So we live in this core where almost all of us have some sort of outdoor interests or gardening interests. So we jokingly say that we have bees and chickens and lots of stuff growing in our core. So it's great. But also it's a place where my daughter could just sort of ride her bike around and not feel that she's unsafe because she knows the people around her. And so I enjoy the ability to be in a neighborhood where we have shared interests, but that neighbors can actually be neighbors and not strangers. And so that's why I enjoy the neighborhood.
Thank you. So you told us a little bit about yourself.
I'm still on.
Oh yeah, you're still not done.
I'm still on.
No, there is a few there. We'll let you know when you can.
Okay. Should I still stand as well too? Or?
So you told us a little bit about yourself, or I read a little bit about you. So if you want, you can tell us more about yourself and what is your connection specifically to Pleasant Hill?
What's my connection to Pleasant Hill? So I think I'll step back a little bit and answer that question, how I maybe got here.
Okay.
Besides sort of the first answer. So I think not everybody knows that I immigrated to the US right after the Vietnam War. So I was born in August, Saigon fell in September, no country left, borders closed essentially. We were actually just outside the country, and so my parents had to make a choice. There was a small window of time where the United States was accepting refugees from the Vietnam War. And so based on that very short period of time, they took what they could, and we had this long journey, and I think there's very similar stories of people sort of my generation who had to do that journey to the US. So we ended up on the East Coast, and we had to wait. Because in order for you to immigrate successfully to the United States, you need a sponsor family or a sponsor group. And so just by happenstance, we had a church just north of Sacramento with a very friendly family who was very involved with the church, sponsor us, didn't know anything about us, complete strangers. Very chaotic time for my family, and so that's how I ended up in California, just because a family reached out and said, we will sponsor you to come to the United States. So that's how I ended up in California. And since then, and I'm sure there's probably questions on sort of how the journey sort of unfolded, but I built a life basically in and around California. Went to school here, did all of my training here, residencies, all the things that I had to do for my career. And so then that's how we ended up probably here, just because of a family way back when decided to say, come on to California.
Thank you. So, how have your neighbors shaped your experience of loving and working here? You told us a little bit about that, the gardening and things like that. But are there any other things that have influenced the way or how your neighbors have shaped your experience and why you love it here and work here?
Yeah, I sort of led off with, Tristan was a great family community. And so because of that, there's just a lot of families around us. So it's always fun and always great to be able to see parents who are kind of about the same generation. So I think it's great to be able to have, or at least build a community where you can create that sort of familial space, even if we're from different backgrounds, different stories, different communities. But we all have kids. We all send them to elementary school, whatever schools may be. We're all driving the sort of the same routes to kind of get to the school. But we also volunteer in the same way. So some of my neighbors I volunteer with on the same activities. So when my daughter was here today, she's actually swimming over in College Park. She's on the swim team. Hundreds of kids, and amazingly, a number of people around us also on the swim team. I've also volunteered other things like the preschool that's in Pleasant Hill, Center of Gravity, which I absolutely adore. A lot of kids have gone there, and a lot of parents have gone there. I was on the family board, and amazingly enough, there was a number of families around it who were also on that family board. So we have these sort of shared experiences, even if you don't have the same stories, that allow us to create the community that we have. I think it was kind of a back and forth, sort of feedback. I help influence them, but they also help influence me as well too.
Okay, so have you ever felt unseen or unheard in your community? And what could have made a difference?
I'm going to take that question, maybe not from stepping back a little bit in my history. So I think a lot of people are familiar with cities that have sort of ethnic areas like Chinatown, or for my particular ethnicity of Vietnamese, there's like Little Saigon. So when we first immigrated here, we came to Sacramento, there was no Little Saigon. Actually, the number of people who are Vietnamese descent that immigrated is actually a very small number before the Vietnam War. Afterwards, there was a large explosion of the population. And so growing up in an area in California that didn't have a large Vietnamese community was not only challenging for myself, I think it was challenging for the community to sort of wrap their arms around a large influx of immigrants coming into a city. They're unfamiliar with who they are, who their history is. And so as a kid, and kids being kids in sort of that area, you sort of talked about racial epithets and things of that nature. Kids being kids, sort of that's a normal thing. I think the difficulty with growing up in that environment is that we didn't have a place that we could call safe. Like, it was difficult to process that when you're coming to a country where your parents don't speak the language well. They're trying to create a new identity from an old identity that's been sort of ripped from them. And then a kid growing up in a space where there wasn't like a supportive, trusted adult that they could go to. A kid, your parents are working, and it's tough to talk to your parents about these types of things. You can't come home from school and say, hey, such and such person said X thing, Y thing. I can't process because there's not a lot of folks like me who I can just go to and share that experience. So I think there was a period in my life where not being seen or not being able to say something was the defining characteristic of how I grew up and how I actually see things nowadays.
So hearing your story, is there any one thing that you'd like your neighbors to know that they may not realize yet?
That's a good question. I think I will answer that as as I'm telling my story, I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding of where I am today with how I got there. So I think, I'm sort of dressed nicely here. You read my bio. I'm a physician, 20 years in the community, practicing medicine, associate clinical professor, all these types of things. And I think people might misunderstand who I am today versus who I was getting there. And I think the journey of struggle, it is not reflected in that. And so there was a period of time where, government assistance programs, church charity, just my parents working, it seemed like every hour they could because they were trying to make a living. That defined like half my childhood life. And so that was very difficult to do. But what I also remember was that there was a group of people that wanted to help. And so in my mind, I think that what I want people to maybe understand a little bit more is that where I am today, sort of the American dream, into quotes, is sort of a two-way street where it's, at least in my mind, I think of it as like sort of this really intense personal grit, but a community, or added to that, a community that wants to invest in the neighbors because they care. And so I think if I sort of the question, if I wanted people to sort of, who am I? And what I think I'm a product of basically just hard work, values instilled in me, but built upon a foundation in which people cleared a path and said, you have potential, go take it. And so I think that's where I think I want people to understand.
Thank you. That was amazing. A lot for us to reflect on. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tran.